Tonight, we're going to show you 8 silent ways to kill a man. The guy who said that was a sergeant who didn't look 5 years older than me. So if he'd ever killed a man in combat, silently or otherwise, he'd done it as an infant. I already knew 80 ways to kill people, but most of them were pretty noisy. I sat up straight in my chair and assumed a look of polite attention and fell asleep with my eyes open. So did most everyone else. We'd learned that they never scheduled anything important for these after-chop classes. The projector woke me up and I sat through a short tape showing the 8 silent ways. Some of the actors must have been brain wipes, since they were actually killed. After the tape, a girl in the front row raised her hand. The sergeant nodded at her, and she rose to parade rest. Not bad looking, but kind of chunky about the neck and shoulders. Everybody gets that way after carrying a heavy pack around for a couple months. Sir, we had to call Sergeant Sir until graduation. Most of those methods, really, they looked kind of silly. For instance, like killing a man with a blow to the kidneys from an entrenching tool. I mean, when would you actually have only an entrenching tool and no gun or knife? And why not just bash him over the head with it? He might have a helmet on, he said reasonably. Besides, Taurans probably don't even have kidneys. He shrugged. Probably they don't. This was 1997 and nobody had ever seen a Tauran. Hadn't even found any pieces of Taurans bigger than a scorched chromosome. But their body chemistry is similar to ours, and we have to assume they're similarly complex creatures. They must have weaknesses, vulnerable spots. You have to find out where they are. That, friends, is the opening couple of paragraphs to a book that I just finished listening to. Yes, I did, in fact, listen to this on audiobook. But we have The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. Now, this is an older sci-fi novel, a previous winner of the Hugo and the Nebula Awards. So my good friend over at Brighton Bookish will be reading this at some point in time as part of her reading through every one of the Nebula winners. Sometimes you go into a book not knowing much. I had heard the title. I was aware of the book, but I knew nothing of the book itself. I didn't know what I was getting into, and it was kind of an impulsive mood type of download from my Overdrive library about a week and a half ago. I wanted something sci-fi. I wanted something older sci-fi. And so I impulsively just grabbed that one and downloaded and started listening to. And sometimes when you do that, you win. And sometimes when you do that, you lose. Thankfully, this time I won. I won majorly. This book, friends, is fantastic. I'm still thinking about this book. It's a kind of a military sci-fi book. And the premise of why it's a forever war is that soldiers are able to travel through these pockets that are in space, and it might take a couple of minutes or maybe a day for them to pass through it, but for everybody else, tens or dozens or hundreds of years might have passed. And so this is a war that is taking place against a particular race, and it's lasting a long, long time. As you heard, it starts in 1997, and it's well into the year 3000 when the story comes to its conclusion. It's a very long war, and this main character is there through it all. So 1997, he's going to be there for the very beginning of the war. When the book ends, the war has come to its conclusion. So technically, it's not a forever war, but my goodness, it's going to feel like it's lasting forever for everybody else. By the time it ends, I think he's still in like his mid to late 20s, which is crazy to think about over all that much time. So if you like gritty sci-fi militaristic type stuff where there's combat and conflict, this is going to scratch that itch. If you like science fiction where they have technology and things that help them to do really fantastic things that we don't even dream of still, this is going to scratch that itch for you. If you like character-driven stories, this is going to do that for you. This book has it all, and I still blown away by it. It is fantastic. Now, I went in probably expecting about 3 stars because that's kind of where my baseline is on something, especially if I don't know anything about it other than having heard the title of the Forever War. I didn't even know at the time that it was a previous winner of the Hugo and the Nebula. That might have raised my expectations a little bit on it. And for the first maybe half of the book, it was probably coasting around to a 4-star read. And I was very happy with that. 4-star is a fantastic read that I'd love to own and revisit. And what cemented this as a 5-star read for me and showed that I truly was able to be drawn into these characters and to the conflict and everything going on is that, yes, at the very end of this book, there was a little mistiness to the eyes because of how it resolved. And that doesn't happen often with books for me. I mean, I'm still a sap that will get teary-eyed at the end of Lord of the Rings every single time. But that's just because, those characters that they give you that investment. But most books don't do that for me. The fact that this one did was enough to elevate it from a 4 to 4.5 star to a 5 in my books because it showed that it hit home. Now, for those that are coming to it today and expecting it to have characters that think and act like we would expect them to think and act today, you're going to be disappointed. There's going to be some moments, especially early on, where you're going to be a little dissatisfied with how promiscuous the men and women in this platoon are, but it even has explanation behind why that is. When you're with the same 50 guys, 50 gals for years in training and going on missions and you are going to be separated from everybody else, of course, you're going to get close to other people throughout there. So the Forever War, it's got some fun twists and turns. There's a segment in there where they come back to Earth for a while, which it's fun seeing how he envisioned Earth changing in the short time that he had been away. I mean, when he comes back, his mom's still alive and everything. So it's very early in the timeline of the story that he comes back to Earth and seeing all of the things that have altered. It's really cool and fun to imagine, to see how he imagined things could have taken place based upon the war going on and how that impacted the economy and how everybody within the world was impacted by this war that unified basically the world against a common enemy out in space. So I can't recommend this one enough. The Forever War, Joe Haldeman, you should pick it up. Whether you're new to sci-fi, old to sci-fi, this one has a little bit of everything for every reader out there. This is going to be an enjoyable ride. I mean, it wasn't too terribly long either. It doesn't give me page numbers on here because I've just got a preview downloaded to be able to show the cover. But I mean, the audiobook was less than 10 hours, so that probably falls in line with somewhere between 200 and 300 pages for the book. It's a good read. And there's even a sequel. I don't know how there's a sequel, but I'm excited to pick up not only a hard copy of this book, because I'm going to want to reread this book at some point in time in the future, but also the other books in the Forever War series by Joe Haldeman, and check out more by Joe Haldeman, another classic sci-fi author that I really haven't read anything by up until reading this book, but now even more than Howard Fast, who I talked about yesterday in The Edge of Tomorrow. Even more so than him, I am very curious to see more of what Joe Haldeman did as an author. So that's all I've got. This is 5-star read. I highly recommend it. If you haven't read anything by Joe Haldeman, if you have not read The Forever War, go check it out. It's awesome. You will enjoy it immensely. So be sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm not sure if I'll have a video up tomorrow on Monday, but definitely I will be back on Tuesday with an E-tag. I was tagged by Steve Donahue, so I'm putting together what I'm going to have kind of a general idea of where I will go on some of those. And yeah, thanks for watching.